the 25th. And that brings us to this evening, our Composer's Corner with guest Thomas Beveridge. He's the music director of the National Men's Chorus, has had a distinguished career in music. He has been recognized for his multifaceted abilities: singer, oboist, keyboard player, composer, arranger, teacher, conductor. He attended Harvard College, studying composition with Randall Thompson and Walter Piston, and choral conducting with G. Wallace Woodworth. Vocal study was at the Longy School of Music with Madame Olga Averino, and later with Madame Nasha Predit. He studied composition and conducting in France with the legendary Nadia Bollinger, I believe. And Mr. Beveridge is a prolific composer and arranger. Many of his over 450 compositions have been published, and he has received distinguished commissions from Harvard University, Harvard Divinity School, Union Theological Seminary, and the Choral Arts Society of Washington, and the Elizabeth Sprague Coolidge Foundation at the Library of Congress. His works have been recorded on numerous labels, including Turntable Vox, Centaur, RCA, and Crystal. And also we have our wonderful host, Andrew Celentano, and I'm going to turn the screen over to you. And thank you so much for coming, everyone.
Thank you, Mike. So first, before I go any further, I think we may have accidentally muted Thomas altogether. Thomas, can you say something? Let's see if you come through. And if not, press the star key and then 6, and that should unmute you. So let's see if that works. I think he's currently muted. So Thomas called in because he's not using Zoom. In fact, he's very old school, which is amazing because he's a prodigious composer.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
Excellent. Thank you, Thomas. Okay. Sorry about that. We muted everyone, including you. So anyway, you know, it's funny because I walk around all the time with my little BSO pin, and it often inspires people to ask about it. When I say that I play at the cafe, they often say, oh, you know, you should know so-and-so. And so I met a fellow who became very good friends with Dr. James Bernstein. I don't know if he's on today or not, but he's a friend of yours, Thomas, way back, I think. Is it high school and elementary school? How far did you guys go back?
We go back music camp when we were both 12 years old.
Oh my God.
I think my oldest friend.
Well, that is amazing. He's quite an amazing individual. In fact, he's working on a new way to sterilize surgical equipment with no water and no electricity. It'll be used in all third world countries. Fascinating guy. So, but anyway, that's how I got introduced to you. And when I mentioned that I'm interviewing Thomas Beveridge, people said, how did you ever get an interview with him? So I'm quite pleased to have this interview. And I've learned so much, you know, the last 3 weeks or so. I've been listening to your music and just enjoying it so much. And of course, you're a prodigious composer. Every time I talk to someone, it sounds like you've done more. Is it 700 compositions? Or
700 works, including, well, quite a few arrangements, but it's 700 pieces.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, before we go too much further, I'm going to play 2 quick interviews. One with Sir Neville Mariner, and who has basically conducted your Discord Requiem. And so this is a wonderful thing that I found. So let me share the screen. I want to make sure I share the sound because I've learned the hard way. If you don't share the sound, no one can hear it. And let me just get to now. I will warn you, this is a YouTube video. So sometimes, although I think I've eliminated the, you never know. Although I think I've eliminated the ad. Sometimes it'll pop up in the middle. So forgive me, folks. But here is this first tape. So listen, this will be fun.
It is remarkably satisfying, I must say, to be involved in a piece like this. I found it strange at the beginning, you know, that the Academy, St. Martin in the Fields, this parish church in the middle of London, involved with part of the American Jewish tradition of music. And I think they're fascinated by it. They suddenly found a whole new repertoire. It's going to make a lot of difference to them, I think, in the future. They'll probably get away from playing just Mozart requiems and Verdi requiems.
The whole idea of the Usco Requiem is to take a simultaneous look at the two parts of what we call the Judeo-Christian tradition. To see it all done so exactly right has just been a wonderful experience.
How does it strike you? I mean, in a personal way, the blending of liturgies, I mean, in this kind of expression in terms of Jewish and Christian heritage?
I feel the sentiment is very much the same. I've never found there was any particular separation between the two cultures at all, musically speaking. But on the whole, I don't think we discuss our religious beliefs during rehearsals, for instance, and so our only contact is musical. We've always considered ourselves to be quite integrated with a musical community as a whole. There are no divisions for us.
A piece like this is extremely apt and necessary, I think, because we should all be living together and not apart in our minds.
The whole piece is concerned with parallel texts and ideas, but it is in the last movement where this whole thing comes together. When you have what is called the Lord's Prayer in the Christian liturgy, and the Kaddish, from which was actually the origin of most of the ideas in the Lord's Prayer, coming together simultaneously with the cantor doing a more or less traditional chant and the chorus singing in very simple way the Our Father. And the music at this point becomes quite dissonant and quite unresolved until it suddenly comes to a huge, about the biggest climax of the piece. Suddenly the orchestra disappears, and you have the chorus just singing simple amens while the cantor sings as he would in the synagogue. And at the very end, there is a lone flute that plays a melody which has occurred earlier in the piece, the Justorum Animae, which talks about how the souls of the righteous are now at peace. And that flute gradually leaves the hall, and you hear it farther and farther and farther away until it disappears. And the flute represents the soul of the departed, which has finally gone to its rest.
How do the chorus, how do the orchestra?
I just love the fact that you have that flute, Thomas, walking away. I've never seen anything like that before. What inspired you to come up with that idea?
Well, it is a magical moment in the, if I do say so myself.
Mm-hmm.
The flute, which, well, actually, in an authentic performance, you have that flute player is not on stage ever. He's back. He or she is backstage or back in the balcony, and represents, after all that's been going on, represents the departing soul. And as the flute player walks away, and the sound becomes more and more distant, it's a very magical moment and very, very moving for the audience.
Now, I do love the fact too that you've got both this Judeo and the Christian influences, and you are quite adept at. In fact, at first I thought you were Jewish because you were a cantor in a synagogue, and I'm thinking, oh my God, and you're so facile with Hebrew and writing and composing in that style. Just share with us a little bit about how that all happened, because you're actually, I believe, are you Scottish? Is that what it is?
Well, I'm a professional. I mean, I earned my living for a long time as a professional singer. So I sang in every conceivable form of church and synagogue, and
wow.
including persuading a rabbi of a Reformed synagogue that I was singing at. Persuading him when they suddenly needed to hire a cantor, I persuaded him that he should hire me, and he said, "But you're not Jewish," and I said, "So what?" So he said, "Yeah, well, you're Jewish anyway. Your attitude is correct." So
now here we have an interview. I think it's Ned Levine, is that his name? And
Neil Levin.
And there's a whole affiliation with the Milken Archives. You want to talk about that?
Milken Archive of American Jewish Music.
Yeah.
They are the ones who recorded, who commissioned Sir Neville Mariner, and the Academy of St. Martin in the Fields to record the work for the Milken Archive of American Jewish Music, which is a fascinating collection of music. I think my piece is the only one written by a non-Jew.
Oh, wow. Okay. By the way, this interview I'm going to do about 3 or 4 minutes. There's a wonderful introduction to what inspired you and how this all came about. So I'm going to turn this on now.
Yeah.
Now, tell me about this piece, the genesis of this piece, of Yisco Requiem.
My father was a professional musician, a choral conductor and organist, who in mid-career became intrigued by the idea of going to seminary and becoming an Episcopal priest, which he did. At the end of his career at the seminary, he was always very interested in theological, philosophical ideas. The idea of the soul intrigued him. The philosophers talking about the soul and music. And he became interested in an institution in Israel called Centaur, which is an ecumenical institution run, I believe, by the Vatican, which is there to promote the dialogue between Jewish and Muslim and Christian thinkers. And upon his retirement from seminary, he went to Centaur for 2 years and lived there and studied Hebrew and became very interested in the Jewish religion. And when he came back, he said to me, he said, "You are the only one who might understand this, because I had a lot of experience as a professional singer performing in synagogues as a part of the professional choir, actually I have been a cantorial soloist in a Reformed synagogue." He said, "But if I hadn't made so many changes in my life, I think I would become a Jew." And I said, "Well, I think I understand what you're talking about," because he was intrigued. We never really had many discussions about what it was about the Jewish religion itself that intrigued him. When he died, actually on the very day of his death, I started to think, a theme came into my head. It sounds like I'm making it up, but it really did happen. This theme, the Requiem Aeternam theme, came to me, and I began to think of a way of memorializing or writing a piece in his memory that would somehow bring together some of the ideas that he wanted to express, not musically, but in terms of philosophy and research. And I knew that one of the biggest influences on him was a book by Erich Werner called The Sacred Bridge, which explores the origins of Christian liturgy in the synagogue. I tried to get some of these ideas, and then the whole idea of trying to find similar texts between the liturgical requiem mass, and to try to write a piece that where one stands on the bridge between the Judeo and the Christian religions, and takes a simultaneous look at how the Jewish memorial service and the Requiem Mass can be brought together in some similar way.
What year did you do this piece?
My father died in 1991, and it took me about 2 years to complete the work.
I want to say, Thomas, that's amazing that you did this whole thing in 2 years, because you do it all by hand and literally use a ruler to put the lines through the notes. It's just a phenomenal amount of effort that got involved in that. I can resonate in a very little way on because I lost some people in my life and wrote a short piece, like 4 minutes. And so this piece goes on for quite a while. In fact,
well, this piece took,
to it, right?
Yeah, well, this piece took an unusual amount of time to put together. Usually I can write a piece in a week or a couple of weeks. It's not all that much effort, but
well, it's impressive. I want to ask, before we go into actually listening to your music, just a little bit about the trajectory of your life. So your father was a musician. When did tell me about how you were exposed to music, and when you made the decision to devote your career to music? How did that go about?
Well, I sang. I grew up in New York, and I sang. When I was 8 years old. I've been singing since I was 8. I sang as a soprano soloist at St. Thomas Church in New York, and the fact that my dad was a musician and played and had chamber music in the house all the time. I mean, there were always the Brandenburg concertos being played, and all. I don't ever remember a time when I said, "Well, I'm going to be a musician." I just thought, "Well, music is going to be my life." And when I went to Harvard, it almost, the whole idea almost ended at Harvard, because when I was there at Harvard, I coined a phrase that said, "At Harvard, music should be seen and not heard," because they were all scholars, and they didn't really like the fact that I was a performing musician.
Interesting.
But it's a long and interesting story. But I was basically a singer, a professional singer most of my life. That's
wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, who would you say are your influencers in terms of fellow composers that you were fond of? What you mentioned the Brandenburg concertos, obviously Bach. But what else in your life do you think would you consider an influence on you?
Oh, I've been asked that many times. I mean, I have such admiration for the great composers. I just play them all the time. Bach, Mozart, Haydn. I mean, there's a reason why they're so well known.
Yes.
And but there's no contemporary composer really that was of interest, a special interest to me. But my study with Nadia Boulanger, who was a great admirer of Stravinsky, of course. But she encouraged me to be independent.
Mm-hmm. What I love about this music is there's such pageantry, and it's lush, and I literally get goosebumps listening to it. So we'll start with Psalm 23. Do you want to give a little background on that?
Yes, well, you're going to play 3 or 4 pieces from the Youth Choral Requiem. And we should say that just as it's said in the interview with Neville Mariner, that Yizkor Requiem, Yizkor is the Jewish, is actually the first word of the Jewish memorial service, and it means may he remember. And Requiem is the first word of the Christian burial service, meaning rest. And so it's significant that it's the term Yizkor Requiem is an attempt to summarize, to identify the common the common things between the two. But I will talk about each piece as you do it just briefly. The Psalm 23. What's interesting about the 23rd Psalm is that it's actually the only one of the only mentions of the word death in the Yizkor Requiem. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil because thou art with me. And it's very positive. So that's Psalm 23.
Okay. And here we go. Thomas, that was beautiful. How do you decide what instrumentation to use? I heard some really beautiful voicings there. Was that a French horn or an oboe in the background at one point?
Yeah, oboe, flute, just very few instruments. The next movement is called Remember, and it involves the cantor and the two soloists plus the chorus. But the texts that it refers to are free. They free this, asking the Lord to free the souls of those who have died, and let perpetual light shine on them. Inscribe us in the book of life. And of course, you get that. That is the big influence of the Jewish tradition, the book of life, because it emphasizes so much. We tend to think that the Jewish religion doesn't, that they say, well, at the end of life, that's it. But it's not true. I mean, these texts are just amazing. So that's the next movement.
Okay. So this is the fourth movement. It's called Remember.
Remember, yes.
What a beautiful voice. Robert Brubaker, the tenor, just amazing. And Anna
Yes,
Maria
and he's
Martinez.
not Jewish either.
Oh, really?
That's amazing.
And Anna
Yeah, he's singing the cantorial part, but
wow.
that is called remember, which is, you know, the word yizkor means remember, and so remembrance is central to everything about the Jewish religion and about Jewish life, because the Jews make a very big deal of remembering the anniversary, the yahrzeit of the deaths of all their loved ones in a way that the Christians really don't do. That's what's so admirable about them. The next piece picks up from what the previous piece talks a lot about Abraham, and this is a very interesting text because it is a Christian text, a Latin text, but the translation is, grant that they may pass, those who have died, may pass from death to life as once you promised to Abraham and his seed forever. Well, we don't think of the Jewish. We think, well, in the Jewish religion that's the death is the end, but it's not so. As I say, you promised to Abraham that they would pass from death to life. So that's what this next piece is about with Latin text.
Okay, and this is called offertory.
Offertory, yes.
Offertory. I'm sorry. I think I went too far. There we go. Just really beautiful. The soprano and mezzo soprano blend so nicely. Anna Maria Martinez, Elizabeth Shamash. In fact, this is Latin, but they talk later about in some of the interview that we did not hear, how the Hebrew language is actually very beautiful and easy to sing, like Italian in some ways, except for the h, but but it's a lot easier than German, I guess. But is Latin also fairly straightforward too?
Oh yeah, the vowel. It only has 5 vowels, and it's very easy to pronounce. But the last words that they sing are et lux perpetuam luceat and let eternal life shine on them, because you hear lots of mentions of perpetual light and these wonderful. I mean, these the thing about the Yizkor Requiem is that there is no day of judgment. There's no dies irae in my Requiem. You know, everything is positive, and there's a wonderful text later on where they may they walk in the Garden of Eden forever. And that's a wonderful Jewish text. But the next movement is the sanctification. There is no mention of death, but it's the central piece of the Requiem, and it's the Sanctus, the traditional Sanctus with some of the Hebrew thrown in, but it's a very powerful piece where the orchestra and the chorus and the soloists all they have their big climax, which you'll hear.
Okay. Thomas, I've got goosebumps just listening to that thing and the way he surprises at the end with a little more. What I love about this is it's like we're going to a concert, listening to about half of this whole requiem, and having you as the composer give us the guidance along the way and helping us understand the genesis of all this and how it works. This is
Well,
wonderful.
I really appreciate the opportunity
Yeah.
to explain things.
Sure. So this is the last of this particular requiem that we're going to listen to. This is number 7. Did you want to talk about that?
Oh, are we going to do that? Or I thought we were going to the Symphony of Peace.
Well, it's up to you. I think we were going to, and then we're going to go to the Symphony of Peace. But we could do the Symphony of Peace now if you'd like.
Let's do that, yeah, because
Sure.
I don't think we'd have time for
Okay.
for
Yeah.
it.
And which track do you want to do on that one?
This number 2.
Okay. So tell us a little bit now. Tell us about the New Dominion Chorale. And,
Okay, well, the New Dominion Chorale, actually, I'm not your wife's announcement. I'm no longer the conductor of the National Men's Chorus. That went out of business. But New Dominion Chorale is my own baby. It's a chorus of about 200 people that actually premiered the Rios Choral Requiem here in Washington, and we're now in our 32nd year. And the performance that you're about to hear of the Symphony of Peace, which is something I worked on for 30 years on and off, was premiered by the New Dominion Chorale. So I'm very proud of this because other organizations have picked up from their performances. But this particular piece that you're going to hear. It's if we have time for the whole movement, it's a text from the book of Micah and from one of the Psalms. But in it talks about how when eventually there will be an ideal time when they said they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, nor shall they study war anymore. But they shall sit at ease under their vine and under their fig tree, and none shall make them afraid. For the mouth of the Lord has spoken. Well, we're thinking about that today with this horrible thing going on in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And you just wonder whether those days will ever come when they'll beat their swords into plowshares.
Wow.
So that's what makes this piece important.
Let's play it in its entirety. It goes on for about 13 minutes, so we might go just a little bit over 8, but that's okay. This is Micah.
It shall come to pass that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established above the hills. shall go and say,
Thomas, that was just wonderful. In fact, we got some great comments here. People saying beautiful, inspiring music, just wonderful to listen to, very accessible. A couple of people
Well,
here.
I'm glad we had glad we had a chance to listen to the whole movement.
Yeah. Now, someone said,
that
I love the shofar sounding. I don't know what that is. We read that should read love. The
yeah,
shofar.
well, of course, the shofar.
What is that?
Excuse me, fingers prominently in actually both the Yitzhak Requiem and the Symphony of Peace.
And what is shofar? Is that an instrument?
Shofar is a ram's horn, and it's played at the high holidays.
Ah.
And the call that you hear is played is a very significant. It's
I love it. By the way, I also love the fact, I'm just reading the notes here, that during the swords into plowshares, you had truck brake drums and anvils being banged. I don't know how you write that instrument into the score, but that's great.
Yeah, no, we had lots of anvils and metallic percussion instruments. It was a very magical moment because it built and built and built, and it had I had 4 percussion players, and they just went and had a lovely time.
Oh my God, that's great. I got a couple of questions here. Someone wants to know if you were influenced by Carl Orff.
Well, who isn't? I mean, he's but yeah, I mean, the simplicity of Carl Orff and the rhythmic ideas are, I think I was, influenced to a certain extent. But one of my favorite criticisms of my music was from, I forget which paper, but it said Beveridge is at best eclectic. And I thought, well, that's a real compliment, because Bach was eclectic, so was Mozart, so was Beethoven. I mean, you can't think of Western music or any music without thinking about the imitation of.
Well, I will tell you, it's quite enjoyable and inspiring, and it literally got goosebumps. Someone here, as a friend of mine, said, being a trumpet player, I love your use of brass. Leonard Bernstein, who was a raised Jewish, wrote a wonderful Catholic mass. Was he one of your influences, perhaps?
No, not really.
Yeah,
not really. But I've really enjoyed the opportunity to have my music played, and you've been a very fine interviewer. And
oh my God, it's my pleasure. I really have enjoyed this. In fact, we look forward to, for all the people that registered, we'll send out some material, including the links to those wonderful interviews, because I'll cut them short, but there's more to them, and they're just quite fascinating to listen to. And,
especially the Neville Mariner one. He said, in fact, Neville Mariner said when he was interviewed that if, because he was not a fan of modern music at all. I mean, this is about the only modern piece of music he ever conducted.
Yeah.
But he said, I like it so much that I would like to have it. I wouldn't mind having it performed at my funeral.
Oh my God! Wow. Well, I have to admit, if you call this modern music, it doesn't have that connotation that some people feel where modern is just, cacophonic and atonal. But it's modern, but also quite beautiful and inspiring.
Thank you.
I want to thank you again. I'm going to just do a quick plug for myself for 2 minutes. I'm going to be performing at the Lincoln Commons in Lincoln on October 22nd. That's a Saturday at 2:30. If people want to come, just go to the front desk and ask for Jason. You have to kind of register and wear a mask for the performance. I'll be there for about an hour. But also next month, I'm interviewing David Fess, who I met, VESS. I met him at a Brockton Symphony concert where he premiered a piece that he wrote that was quite fascinating. But again, I just want to end this by saying, Thomas, this was a wonderful privilege to have the time with you and the prep beforehand and listening to all your music. And I'm sure there's a lot of music I won't have time to listen to, but just a fascinating trajectory in your career and all you've done, the legacy you've left with us, and really wish you're almost 50 years married, I understand, to your wonderful wife, who's also quite talented. Meryl Seacrest, as you may know, folks, is someone that's written 14 biographies.
She's better known than I am. So
what a talent!
Well, maybe we can do this again.
Yeah.
Well,
I really appreciate your time.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Bye.
Thank you all. Everyone, have a great day, and thank you all for joining us again. Thanks to the Cummings Center, and thanks to the Jenks Center for handling all of this. Have a great night, everyone.
Good evening. Bye.
Thank you so much.
It's beautiful.